Hello over the peak. Right, we'll get through this Friday world news, and hopefully over the weekend Richard might be able to put the website back together again, because I've broken it. I'm sorry for everything. I've been tinkering and broken it. But let's get through this and we'll see what happens in the future when it arises. PIMCO wins a bet on inflation. Pacific Investment Management Company, that's PIMCO, and Morgan Stanley recently played a high-stakes game of chicken over inflation, and PIMCO won. The bond powerhouse scored gains of about $50 million on an inflation-related trade, according to people familiar with the matter. So that's inflation. When you know what it is, you can make $50 million out of it. It seems that Morgan Stanley didn't quite get that one right. Betting, that's all it is. Let's keep going. Mish gives us the hamster wheel economy. And this is Trim Tabs. He's quoting Trim Tabs. Yeah, Trim Tabs says that the US economy added 171,000 jobs in June. However, real wages and salary growth is minus 2% when adjusted for 3.6% inflation, which sounds reasonable, and the 2% payroll tax cut, which is only a one-year thing and it should be coming off. It's a temporary bonus, but I've been saying all along, these tax cuts, how can they possibly what's the opposite of a tax cut? Tax add. How can they put it back to where it was? But if they do put it back to where it was and take inflation into account, real wage and salary growth is negative. It's minus 2%. So this is why I don't think they can ever put taxes up. So if they want to do this balancing of the budget thing, they're going to have to put spending down. It's a bit of a countdown now, isn't it? Early August for the budget thing. Madness. Mish again on a different post, just really because he's put these charts in easy to present order. Portugal 10-year government bonds. Portugal has been rescued, and there you've got September, November into this year, March, April, May into July. It's just tramping upwards and upwards, and you can see that huge spike just before this chart was created. And this is 10-year bonds, and they're at 13%, for goodness sake. And Ireland the same, still tramping up and up and up, nearly 13%, 12.5%. The outliers, just outside the disaster zone, Spain and Italy. Spain first came to attention there. You can see in November where it swung upwards, and it's been kind of just hovering in the background as bad, over 5% for the 10-year, which is alarm bells, over 5%, and it's maintained over 5%. But it's Italy that seems to be causing the market problems at the moment, problems as in the jitters, and they have now gone up through 5% as well. Over in Germany, this is a remarkable chart. Orders received from the domestic market within Germany at current prices flows for Germany. Going back to 1998, look at that spike in the end. That is the last information in. Orders received from the domestic market. Madness. We knew Germany, everybody wanted them to go have more internal demand to rebalance the euro area, but this is crazy. And if this is the Financial Times. If you read the comments, about the only two comments that kind of got close to explaining this is, it's a mistake. That was one. It's erroneous, but it seems all through all the data, all through the data, all spikes up like this. Or the Germans think the euro's just going off the rails, and think because of their past, inflation is going to flood in, so they're putting the orders in now before inflation hits. It doesn't mean they're right just because they're German. It's just because they've got an inbuilt fear of inflation, that this could be happening. The meme has gone round that inflation is going to hit, so they're buying now. Maybe. There seems to be no other explanation for this. Moment of truth for the Eurozone, a very good article by Martin Wolf. I'll just start you off, and if you're interested, the link might not be there if things don't get repaired. I try all the time to get these things up, like the audio and the links, but they're just not working at the moment. But if they're there, that means Richard's fixed it. The biggest question in any debt crisis is whether a credible path back to solvency can be found. Now, it's good that he understands. He has the balls to write solvency. We know Greece is not solvent, nor really is Ireland or Portugal. So it's the path back to solvency can be found. For Greece, this now seems very unlikely. The same is true to a lesser extent for Ireland and Portugal. This raises three further questions. First, how big is any required restructuring, the haircuts and whatever? Second, who should bear the costs, because you get a haircut and somebody has to pay for it? And then, is restructuring even going to be enough, even after big haircuts? Could Greece still then get back on the path to being solvent? A good question. If the answer to the last question, the tricky question, is no, then one has to ask whether the currency union will last in its current form. The currency union, the Eurozone, is doing everything it can for Greece, but about the only thing it can do for Greece at the moment is lend it more money so it can pay its debts off and try and force it to be efficient, but it's so wildly inefficient. You can't do this overnight, and overnight is, in the next 3-5 years. Can they do it in 10 years? Will the Germans' patience last that long? Another very good article in the Financial Times, credit rating agencies place US ECB in a bind, the European Central Bank. I'll read it because it's quite important behind the scenes. Trying to break an addiction is a tricky business, but the way the financial system is going about ending its unhealthy reliance on credit rating agencies is nothing less than bizarre. The most recent manifestation of this comes from the unhappy situation the European Central Bank finds itself in. Jean-Claude Trichet, the ECB president, has been one of the many European officials that have regularly railed against the influence of the rating agencies, decrying the dominance of Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch. But this is the same Mr. Trichet that has placed the fate of Greece, and arguably the entire Euro project, in the hands of these rating agencies, because the ECB has said it would not accept Greek collateral in its liquidity operations if Greece was downgraded by the agencies to default or selective default. It's even I'll just tell you what goes on with there as well. The ECB chooses which of Standard & Poor's, Moody's and Fitch it wants to listen to on which particular occasion. If Fitch and Moody's downgrade Greece to let's say selective default here, but Standard & Poor's don't, ECB will choose Standard & Poor's, and any good one it can find it'll use. But even so, if they all go to selective default or default when these voluntary haircuts go on, the ECB will have to go along with that, because that's what they said they're going to do. But they're only saying they're going to do it as blackmail for... It's just madness what's going on. Really, it's madness. Games, dangerous games. Another, dare I say, very good article in the Financial Times, Debt Crisis of Faith. Even as the Eurozone is struggling to put together a new financial rescue package for Athens, warning signs keep flashing of an erosion of trust in its strategy. The Greek rescue and European Financial Stability Facility were meant to tide countries over until private lenders recovered from a temporary panic. It has turned out that the panic is chronic. These huge lendings from the Troika, the ECB, the IMF and the Eurozone, the EU they call it, making up the Troika, are meant to just keep these countries going until they can go back to the market and borrow like big boys. But the market's just saying, no, we're out of here, and got no sign of them coming back at all. We saw the rates, how the rates are just going up and up. We'll come back in, they say, but we'll expect these huge rates that the countries just can't afford. Yields on the sovereign obligations of Greece, Ireland and Portugal remain near record highs. This does not mean that these countries' plans for securing the sustainability of their public finances are unbelievable. But it does mean that the markets do not believe them. In this sense, the rescues are failing, and certainly they are. And there's a good lot of words in between this and more in the article here. The failure to win over private lenders has prompted a crisis of faith among the official ones. Finland's government, for example, now says it will only lend more funds to Athens against collateral in Greek state property. Can you imagine? Across core Europe, doubts are rising about the viability of Greece's programme, of course. No wonder the debtor nations are also growing weary of austerity with no visible endgame. That's the debtor nations. They're saying, you said that you'll tide us over and we'll be able to go back to the market then, but you can see the market's rejecting what you're telling us to do. The refusal of private markets to reopen, then, is sapping official and voter confidence. That is a tragedy, for what is really needed, economically and politically, is a new big push. The Financial Times has argued that the Eurozone must adopt a comprehensive Brady plan in place of its policy of applying one patch at a time. And it's the end of the week, so it's not the time to be going into what the Brady plan is, Brady bonds and whatever, but you can guarantee there are, ECB, there are many people that don't like the idea, and it's all politics, and it's very dangerous, and it's playing, and a lot of people are getting punished for the playing. But I'm not saying that they should stop playing and do the right thing, because nobody, it seems, knows what the right thing is. The Financial Times says it's a Brady bonds plan, but they don't think it is. And you can be sure that the Brady bond idea is not the perfect idea, because it is absolutely for sure there is no perfect way out of these problems. I hope to see you next week. Have a good one. Bye.